Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The gallery was silent, the air thick with the heavy heat of a midsummer afternoon, as if the sun itself was pressing against the courthouse windows, insisting on witnessing what no resident of Genoa City ever imagined could happen: the unraveling of Victor Newman's power before the eyes of the very people he had controlled, intimidated, loved, and betrayed for decades. Even the most seasoned reporters, those who had followed the Newmans for years, seemed to tremble at the edges of their notepads as they prepared to record a moment that would inevitably reshape the legacy of the most formidable titan the city had ever known. Nikki Newman sat poised, every bone in her spine aligned with a determination few had ever seen in her, except perhaps the man she was divorcing. Her face, elegant and calm, betrayed no hint of the sleepless nights leading up to the trial. No trace of the grief that gnawed at her whenever she imagined a life without the alluring, terrifying force that was Victor. The sound of the judge calling the court to order reverberated through the chamber like a thunderclap, pulling everyone present into a suspended anticipation. And then came the moment that shattered everything. The heavy wooden doors creaked open, and in walked Summer Newman, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she clutched a small, silver USB drive like a grenade. Eyes widened, whispers erupted, and even Victor's stoic mask faltered, a twitch of unease crossing his features. Summer had never been one to disrupt the Newman family's ironclad code of silence, yet there she stood, trembling but resolute, her voice barely steady as she approached the bench and asked permission to submit new evidence. Nikki looked at her granddaughter in shocked wonder, unable to comprehend what could possibly sit inside that tiny device that risked detonating the very foundation of their family. Victor's attorneys exchanged frantic, whispered objections, but the judge raised a firm hand, ordering them to sit, granting Summer the floor. With every eye fixed on her, Summer swallowed hard and explained that the USB contained audio and video recordings, secret conversations, financial transfers, coercions, proof that Victor had orchestrated manipulations throughout the marriage, forcing loyalty through fear and power, undermining Nikki's independence, and using subsidiary companies to siphon marital assets beyond legal reach. Gasps scattered through the room like sparks igniting dry brush. Victor stood abruptly, the eruption of his anger barely contained, his voice booming through the chamber as he demanded to know how Summer had obtained such files. But Summer, tears glistening in her eyes, refused to look away. She confessed that Claire had tipped her off about hidden Newman corporate archives Victor kept outside official servers, encrypted accounts storing years of evidence. It was a betrayal layered over betrayal. The empire he built had been undone not by business rivals, not by corporate espionage, but by the family he spent a lifetime trying to protect and control. As the judge reviewed the contents of the USB, the courtroom held its breath. Nikki watched her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, with a complex mix of devastation and relief. She had loved him fiercely, endured his storms, forgiven his sins, but she had finally reached the breaking point where survival required separation. When the judge returned, the ruling struck like lightning. The recordings revealed a pattern of manipulation so pervasive, so chilling, that the court had no choice but to rule overwhelmingly in Nikki's favor. Full control of shared marital assets, protection orders against corporate retaliation, legal restrictions preventing Victor from interfering with Newman property held jointly before the proceedings. Victor Newman, the man who had conquered enemies in boardrooms and backrooms, who had outmaneuvered hostile takeovers, survived villains, illnesses, and betrayals, now stood defeated, not by corporate warfare, but by the consequences of his own iron-fisted reign at home. The courtroom erupted with stunned disbelief, but Nikki remained seated, frozen in a moment that felt unreal. Summer collapsed into a chair, sobbing with the weight of what she had done, questioning whether she had saved or destroyed her family. Victor's glare burned through her like fire, but beneath the rage was a wound deeper than anyone anticipated. Summer, his beloved granddaughter, had chosen truth over loyalty. Reporters fled the room to alert the world. Outside, news vans rolled and cameras snapped, journalists shouting questions that would echo across national headlines. Victor Newman loses everything. Nikki wins divorce war. But inside the courtroom, the echoes fading, Nikki whispered a quiet apology, not for winning but for finally breaking free. Victor attempted to speak, but the judge silenced him, ordering that he accept the ruling without further protest. It was in that moment, when the gavel struck and the courtroom was dismissed, that Genoa City felt the earth shift beneath its feet. Because power had changed hands not through conquest but accountability. And as Victor exited the courtroom, his once indomitable stride slowed, shoulders heavy with an unfamiliar gravity, the lingering question pulsed in every mind. Who was Victor Newman, stripped of control? In the halls outside, Nikki paused before stepping into the swarm of reporters, her fingers brushing the cool courthouse wall as if grounding herself in a new reality. She inhaled deeply, took her first liberated breath and stepped forward, not as Victor's wife, but as a woman finally reclaiming her life. Summer watched her grandmother with conflicted pride, knowing the cost of truth might fracture the Newman family forever. And somewhere, deep within the labyrinth of Victor's resentment and pain, a singular, dangerous resolve ignited. This was not the end. This humiliation, this betrayal would demand an answer. Summer glanced at the USB drive now secured in evidence storage, haunted by what other secrets it might contain. Files unseen, threats unspoken. The war between loyalty and justice had begun. Victor's eyes narrowed, the spark of vengeance unmistakable, promising battles yet to come. Genoa City had witnessed history, but the aftershocks of this summer surprise would ripple far beyond the courtroom walls, reshaping alliances, igniting rivalries and destroying illusions that power could shield anyone, even a Newman, from the truth. The courthouse emptied slowly, but whispers clung to every corner of the building like ghosts refusing to leave, swirling around the marble floors and echoing through the stairwells, carrying fragments of fear and fascination about what Victor Newman might do next. Because everyone in Genoa City understood one truth: Victor did not lose, not without retaliation, not without reshaping the world around him to reclaim dominance. Yet on this day, he walked through the doors alone, no entourage at his side, no shield of legal power, just the raw shock of a man betrayed by his own blood, and the weight of decades of control collapsing beneath him like a decaying empire. Nikki stayed inside for a private moment with her lawyers, but her hands trembled beneath the table though she held her chin high, aware that victory came with a price she could not yet fathom. Because breaking free from Victor was not like dismantling a business deal or closing a hostile takeover. This was untangling from a lifetime of love and torment braided so tightly into her identity that the threads threatened to snap and unravel her completely. Summer lingered outside the courtroom, her eyes swollen, feeling the burn of judgment from passers-by who knew nothing of what she had seen in those files, the threats Victor had whispered into boardroom phones, the orchestrated illusions that kept the Newman name untarnished. She had not intended to destroy him but to protect Nikki from yet another cycle of dominance, yet she could already feel the ripple effects spreading through the family. Kyle's uneasy messages buzzing on her phone, Phyllis demanding to know what she had done, and Claire standing silently beside a pillar, avoiding eye contact as if burdened by her role in uncovering the archive. Across town, Newman Enterprises buzzed with alarm as employees read emergency emails summoning department heads to an urgent meeting. Rumors spread like wildfire that Victor had been dethroned, that Nikki might seize leadership after all, and that the internal power balance was slipping into chaos. Victoria paced her office, torn between relief for her mother and fury toward Summer for exposing family secrets, because Victoria had spent her life earning power within Newman, sacrificing relationships, loyalty, and peace in pursuit of her father's approval, only to watch that legacy crumble in a single afternoon. Nick, however, sat quietly in the conference room, staring out the window at the fading sunlight, understanding on a deeper level that this moment was an inevitable reckoning, long overdue, and that maybe, just maybe, Nikki deserved a future without fear, manipulation, or compromise. Meanwhile, Victor retreated to the ranch, his silence terrifying those around him more than any outburst ever had. He poured a drink with a trembling hand, replaying Summer's testimony in his mind, each word cutting deeper than the last. Because it wasn't the evidence that wounded him most, it was the betrayal, the realization that love had finally chosen truth over loyalty, and that his iron will had forged the very rebellion now destroying him. He paced the study, fists clenched as memories surged through him, Nikki's tears, the reconciliations, the promises, the failures, and for a fleeting moment regret pierced his pride, but only long enough for rage to swallow it whole. Because Victor Newman did not accept defeat, he calculated responses, and the wheels of vengeance already turned behind his cold, calculated stare as he began drafting a list of allies to rally, enemies to target, assets to regain, and strategies to reclaim control. Back at the courthouse, Nikki finally emerged, shielding her eyes from the camera flashes that burst like fireworks. Reporters hurled questions demanding statements about the historic ruling, but Nikki held her composure, offering only a measured acknowledgement that justice had been served, though beneath her steady voice a storm brewed. A fear that Victor's power, wounded and cornered, would become unpredictable and dangerous. Summer approached her cautiously, lower lip trembling as she whispered an apology, unsure whether she had truly helped or destroyed her grandmother. But Nikki placed a hand on her cheek and whispered that this moment was necessary, that truth was the only path to healing wounds buried beneath decades of pain. Yet even as she spoke, a chill crawled up her spine, sensing the distant thunder of consequences approaching. Claire joined them, tense and alert, explaining that the hidden archive was only one layer of Victor's secret network, hinting at deeper shadows she had brushed against but dared not reveal fully, because exposing the rest would ignite a war beyond legal boundaries. A war of blackmail, corruption, and buried crimes that could shatter the Newman dynasty forever. Nikki inhaled sharply, shaken by the implication that the USB drive was merely the beginning, and for the first time since the ruling, she questioned whether she could truly break free from the man who built an empire of loyalty through fear. But she straightened her shoulders, determined to survive whatever storm followed. Above them, the sky darkened as thunder rolled across the horizon, an omen perhaps of the shadow Victor's rage would soon cast over Genoa City. And as Summer, Nikki, and Claire walked away from the courthouse steps, unaware that Victor was already setting plans into motion, a new chapter of betrayal, revenge, and shattered alliances began, promising that this summer shock would not fade quietly but explode into a battle that threatened to burn the entire Newman legacy to the ground. Night settled over Genoa City like a suffocating curtain, though sleep eluded nearly everyone connected to the Newman Empire as the magnitude of the day reverberated through hearts, boardrooms, living rooms, and barstools alike, sparking quiet conversations, angry accusations, and whispered fears about what Victor Newman would do next, because if history had taught this city anything, it was that Victor did not surrender. He strategized in silence, recalibrated power from the ashes, and struck back with precision so ruthless it left even loyal allies trembling. Thus, the darkness around the ranch seemed charged with unseen tension as Victor retreated into his private office, locking the doors, powering up encrypted computers, and pulling classified documents from the safe behind the portrait above the fireplace, the flickering flames casting distorted shadows across his hardened face as he opened files, some decades old, some newly created, containing contingency plans designed for betrayals he once dismissed as impossible, contingency plans demanding activation now that Nikki, the love he could never fully possess, had wrenched control from his grasp with the evidence Summer delivered. Across town, Nikki lay awake in the guest room at Victoria's home, unable to return to the ranch, each heartbeat loud in her ears as she stared at the ceiling, grappling with an unfamiliar mix of liberation and terror, knowing she had finally broken the cycle of pain yet fearing she had awakened a monster more dangerous than ever before, wondering whether Victor's thirst for control would turn into a war she might not survive. Victoria herself paced the hallway outside Nikki's door like a restless sentinel, her pride for her mother warring with dread about what Victor might do to reclaim Newman Enterprises or dismantle the family piece by piece as punishment for betrayal, because Victoria understood better than anyone how her father's wrath operated, methodical, personal, relentless. Somewhere else, Nick nursed a drink at the club, replaying the court scenes in his mind, torn between loyalty to family and moral clarity, knowing Summer's actions, though devastating, might be the only force strong enough to finally break Victor's manipulative grip on Nikki. Meanwhile, Summer sat alone in her apartment, staring at her laptop as emails from reporters poured in, all demanding exclusive interviews and access to the files, but she ignored them, horrified that the truth she uncovered might become a wildfire destroying everything it touched. Yet part of her, a quiet inner voice long silenced by family loyalty, whispered that exposing Victor might finally protect future generations from repeating the trauma that had fractured Nikki's spirit for years. On the other side of the city, Claire stared at the Newman's encrypted server logs she still had access to, searching for breadcrumb trails leading deeper into Victor's hidden operations, each discovery tightening her stomach as she realized how vast his shadow network truly was. Shell companies in foreign jurisdictions masking illegal transfers, psychological files assessing employees' vulnerabilities, and covert leverage obtained over business rivals and political figures. She wondered whether Summer's USB contained only the surface layer, whether a catastrophic truth still slept beneath digital camouflage, and whether awakening it would destroy not just Victor, but Nikki, the children, innocent employees, and perhaps even Genoa City itself. Victor, sensing the fractures forming across his empire, began placing calls in the dead of night, first to trusted associates abroad, arranging the movement of funds into secure accounts beyond legal reach, then to former enemies now turned uneasy allies, proposing mutually beneficial pacts forged in desperation, and finally to a private security contractor specializing in data extraction and asset recovery, instructing them to locate the origin of the breach that exposed his archive. He wanted names, digital traces, leverage, and revenge. As dawn approached, Nikki finally drifted into a restless sleep haunted by dreams of Victor standing over her, whispering threats she could not escape. She awoke breathless, sensing the storm had already begun. Indeed, while she slept, Victor issued directives to seize control of board votes at Newman through an emergency shareholder maneuver, triggering panic throughout the company when employees arrived to find emails referencing a hostile leadership restructuring. Yet when the legal team attempted to file the motions, they discovered new restrictions from the divorce ruling blocked Victor's access to necessary funds and authority, fueling his fury. Meanwhile, the judge ordered protective details assigned to Nikki and Summer after reviewing additional threats circulating online. Messages from anonymous sources warning them to withdraw their claims or face consequences. Summer panicked, considering fleeing the city, but Nikki insisted they face the danger head-on, refusing to abandon the truth now that it had finally surfaced. Claire, sensing imminent escalation, met secretly with Chance, informing him of Victor's shadow network and urging a covert investigation before Victor shielded his assets deeper underground. Chance hesitated, aware that taking on Victor meant risking his badge, career, and life, yet he also understood that allowing Victor to rebuild unchecked could yield even greater destruction. Meanwhile, Victor convened a private meeting at the ranch with 3 of his most loyal business operatives, figures who thrived in the underbelly of corporate manipulation, and laid out a retaliatory plan. Discredit Summer through a smear campaign, challenge Nikki's legal victory by claiming the evidence was illegally obtained, and leak confidential scandals tied to key witnesses to shift public opinion in his favor. He vowed to reclaim control not just of assets, but of perception, reputation, and loyalty. Across the city, whispers of Victor's retaliation traveled through corporate channels and media leaks, igniting fear among those who interacted with him, prompting some to flee alliances before becoming collateral damage. Victoria confronted her father at the ranch, demanding he drop revenge and accept accountability, but Victor's response chilled her. Quietly, he vowed that he would destroy anyone who believed he could be defeated, including his own family if necessary. The words echoed in Victoria's mind long after she left, fueling her resolve to support Nikki against the growing threat. As tensions mounted, an unexpected message arrived in Claire's inbox, an encrypted file from an unknown sender containing fragments of a deeper archive Victor thought erased. The message claimed that the USB represented only a fraction of the truth, warning that if Victor succeeded in retaliation, the remainder might vanish forever, erasing proof of crimes that spanned decades. Claire hesitated to open it, aware that doing so could unleash revelations powerful enough to collapse not just the Newman legacy but powerful institutions tied to Victor's dealings. Yet she also understood Nikki's safety and justice might depend on uncovering the full scope of Victor's operations. Summer, staring out her window as the sunrise bathed the city in harsh light, whispered a silent vow through trembling lips, that she would not run, no matter how terrified she became, because breaking the cycle required courage, and the truth once spoken could not be buried again. As the morning news broadcast headlines announcing the fallout of the ruling,